Yo, is there a meaning to life? Like some type of objective meaning to life? And how can we test it? And is this whole thing about meaning for life just our own imagination trying to sort things out and try to give any credibility to life, and or is it just a way to make it not look as bad as it is? I already argued in a previous video of mine that meaning cannot exist. If meaning exists, it should exist independently of our interpretations or how we feel about it. It should exist independently of our minds. Therefore, it must be objective. If it needs to be independent of our own minds, independent of our own existence, it must definitely come from an external source. This external force, if we say that this external force is the one that is responsible of giving our lives meaning, therefore this external force must necessarily, in order to follow the argument, it must necessarily be higher than us. It must necessarily transcend our nature as human beings. You simply cannot just get meaning or order or command, some sort of imperative from something which is in nature lower than you. It just cannot be the case. So this source of meaning must transcend our human nature, must be higher than us, above us, a mind beyond ours. And since we have existed approximately now for like 300,000 years, please correct me if I'm wrong, as Homo sapiens, this being must be way before us. It must necessarily be eternal, because if it's not eternal, it means that it has begun in time. If this particular higher being begun in time, it must definitely get its own meaning, its own imperative from something which is higher. And we get here, just right here, the problem of infinite regress. It cannot happen. So our source of meaning must definitely must definitely be eternal, cannot begin in time, because if it began in time, its command or its meaning must be gotten from another source. All right. Therefore, our own source must be just a messenger which carries the message. But we want the definite source. The source is the source. If we want the source, this source must be eternal, because if it starts in time, it becomes a slave of time, a slave of the circumstances of time. It must be beyond time. And of course, not beating around the bush, this being that we're talking about is God. But here's the problem. If you say that you get your own meaning for life, your own purpose of life from a God, I wouldn't say only that people who believe in God have not yet met their burden of proof. Therefore, if you didn't meet the burden of proof for your own God, if you didn't meet it for the source, you didn't meet it also for the thing that you claim stems from the source. If the source is false, the thing that stems from the source is also false. Or if the source is only fictional and doesn't really exist, the thing that comes from the source, from the fictional source, is also fictional. Something fictional cannot give you something true. But this is not my only problem here, and I wouldn't be talking just about this. The problem I have right now is, if we have, hypothetically, a source for meaning, or purpose, or command, or whatever, you say that I have some type of source that gives me what I need to do in life, what I must do, how I must live. I would say that because you have something external of yourself dictating how you should behave in life and how you should live your life, it only means that you have no meaning in life, because your meaning comes from an external force. It's actually self-defeating to say that I have a meaning because God said it. It's self-defeating. How can it be? I can only have meaning only if some external higher force says so. If it doesn't say so, I have no meaning. Therefore, I have no say in this. I have no say. I'm just passive. I'm just passive in this whole deal. It only means that I have no purpose. Then if this higher force says that you must live according to A becomes the meaning, the objective meaning. Alright, tomorrow this higher force changes its mind. You should live your life in respect to B. B becomes the meaning. Tomorrow, he says, live it according to C. C becomes the objective meaning. What is this? We're only following the mood of a deity. Therefore, just in conclusion, if you get your meaning from God, it only means that your life is meaningless, that your existence is meaningless, because you exist only in the agenda and in the plan of a higher force. You are nothing but a pawn, nothing but a wheel in this giant factory. He who owns the factory has a meaning, yes, because he is eternal. Of course, he has meaning as long as he can remember. But you yourself do not have this meaning because you're not eternal. And once you start in time, you become a slave to space and time. The circumstances of your location and your time forms who you shall be, forms who you are. And you cannot escape it. It's just how it is. Free will doesn't exist. It cannot be. You cannot, if you were born in the 80s, you wouldn't be the same person if you were born in the 90s. This is even fallacious, and I could say that it is, because I cannot say you will not be yourself if you were born in the 80s, because in this statement I already presume that you are you even if you were born in the 80s, except that you would not become yourself later on. You are born in that specific time, in that specific space, and it could not be otherwise, because the world is determined. And it comes from it's like dominoes falling apart. It's just, everything is physical, everything is just atoms behaving as they need to behave. Alright, somebody might come here and say, no, quantum mechanics, quantum physics and stuffs. Quantum physics do not actually prove free will. They only give a push to determinism. They only prove determinism even further, even more. Because if you say, no, the world is not determined because of superposition and the atoms behave differently unless they are washed or supervised or something like that, I would say that those atoms, I would say that what I'm gonna do, my future actions and my future behavior is still not according to my own free will. My future behavior will be according to the probability of those atoms manifesting themselves. And we cannot even talk about free will in accordance to quantum physics. Because when we're talking about the brain structure, we're not talking about quantum physics. The brain still follows the laws of classical physics. It still follows thermodynamics. It still follows genetics and evolutionary psychology. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Please. My argument is just is. Even if the world is not determined because of quantum physics and a lot of things, I frankly do not understand a lot about quantum physics, but it only pushes determinism further and proves it even more. Free will cannot exist because the world, let's not say determined, let's say because the world is probable. How things would manifest themselves and how I will behave in the near future would still exist in accordance to the probability of those atoms doing their thing or whatever. Even though as I exist as a whole, I am simply nothing but the nervous system, and the nervous system is physical as it is. The brain is controlled and shaped by our genes, controlled by our emotions and feelings, controlled with memories and experiences that we didn't control. Before we do and behave or act or do anything at all, there is always some brain activity before every action. And this is included. Moving, whatever this is still included in a brain activity precedes every action. What am I but the nervous system? The nervous system is basically just atoms and is not eternal. I didn't start in time, therefore I'm not free and I cannot be. It's simple. And I have strayed away from my topic of this video, and this always happens because in order to prove a point you need to prove another point, and it keeps on going like that until you realize that you are actually deviating or straying away. Let's get back to that. I said that if you claim that you get your meaning from a God, this is self-defeating, because you are saying that if this God says that I don't have meaning, I don't have meaning. I have meaning because God says so. And you need to live your life according to this plan that I have made. And you claim that I have a meaning that you got from somebody else. It's an imperative, it's a command. It's an order. How can you have a meaning while you are only obeying orders? Now that you're telling me, okay, alright, I don't believe in God, hypothetically. I don't believe in God, I don't believe God has given us any sort of meaning and stuff like that. How about I come up with my own meaning for life? Alright, this is what everybody's doing. Just coming up with their meaning for life. And I could argue that it's not meaning at all. What you presume and what you claim that is your meaning for life, you could, for example, my meaning for life is travel the world. No, it's not. It's not a meaning. It's just something which gives you pleasure. That's all. It's something which you enjoy. As soon as it stops giving you pleasure, you would definitely just change it to something else. And it would be your new meaning. Anyway, people come up with all sorts of different types of meaning around the whole world. Okay? But this only proves how we cannot have meaning objectively. Again, if person A comes up with his own meaning, person B comes up with his own meaning, person C comes up with his own meaning, can't you see that because those meanings are different, they're not exactly one? And whether this thing exists, it must be one. Necessarily. In order for something to be, it must be one. It must be the one in order to be objectively. But since those things are different, alright, and especially that they are changeable, people just change their meanings for life in a day and in a night. A meaning today would not be my meaning next year, and stuff like that. Perhaps I would say that I have a meaning right now in philosophy, not that I mean it. I just mean that I have pleasure right now in philosophy. I don't know, next year maybe I get pleasure from riding bikes or whatever. It's just like this. Therefore, if we have these three persons A, B, C, and each one of them has a different type of meaning, and they are different and they're not one, it only means that they are only imagining meaning and making up meanings and coming up with all sorts of different things which are actually self-defeating, because if meaning exists, it must objectively exist as one, and it must come from a higher source, which we have already debunked, that in that case again you wouldn't have a meaning because it would be an imperative. If it is an imperative, you are not and you're just a robot. And how come a robot have a meaning? You're made for this. And you claim it's your own meaning. And you take pride in it. I would say that the only meaning which could objectively be demonstrated is a biological meaning. The meaning of passing your genes to the next generation. Sex. Just sex. The meaning of life is sex. according to biologists. Okay? And now we philosophers would like to this, theologians, religion, this, that, no pleasure, avoiding pain and stuff like that. No, not really. Goodness, no. Evil, no. No. Sex. The meaning of life is helping our fellow man. No. Sex. How can you demonstrate that helping your fellow man is the meaning? How can you demonstrate that? But we can of course demonstrate objectively using science that sex is the objective meaning for all living organisms. Our brains are evolved for seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. You see a woman passing, you feel your whole cells wanting to have sex. Of course, depends on how that woman is attractive, sexually attractive. Everything is just pleasure. Everything is just sex. Your brain uses you. I could say that your genes, your DNA, is using you to pass to the other generations. Your DNA doesn't actually care about you breaking some type of law or some type of social construct or some type of religion or hell or punishment or prison. No, just pass on the fucking genes. Just have sex and I will reward you for it. Some spike of dopamine when you get your orgasm. That's it. That's an objective meaning for life, according to biology. That is an objective meaning for life. And as soon as you hit puberty, you start feeling it. It keeps pushing you. It keeps pushing you to do it. I would say this is an objective meaning for life. Having sex. But if you're telling me feeding children in Africa, publishing books, worshipping the divine, teaching people, spreading goodness, helping my fellow man, climbing the highest mountains, planting trees. No, we cannot objectively demonstrate that those are the case. And the fact that every one of you claims to have a different type of meaning from the other, it only reinforces the idea that you are only making them up. You're only inventing them. They're only fiction. So in conclusion, in a world A, God exists and creates you in order to for a plan. He has some type of grand goal. You still don't have meaning because it comes from somewhere else. It comes from somewhere else. You're only a robot. You're just following orders. In a world B, God doesn't exist. You feel trapped in this existence and pretty much it gives you an existential crisis, I don't know. You start coming up with all sorts of meaning to just follow, to just keep living and avoid killing yourself. Just keep inventing types of meaning, keep inventing purposes for pleasure. You keep doing that. You keep inventing all sorts of meaning absurdly. It's absurd. Meaning of life is absurd. People invent those things. They're not. Life would be just dull if we didn't do that. We need a meaningful life in order to have a pleasant life, in order to keep on experiencing pleasure. Life would be dull if we don't experience pleasure. We need to get into contacts. We need to get into competitions. We need to write books. We need to make videos like that. We need to travel the world. We need to take care of the poor. We need to do that and this because it gives us pleasure. Because it keeps satisfying our brain. Perhaps distracting us from how the world is bad. And so all sorts of that. But okay, if you want to call it meaning, alright. But it's only pleasure in disguise, actually. Just pleasure in disguise. We don't have meaning in life. We just have activities that reward us. That's all there is. If God exists, He gives you a command, you don't have any meaning. If God doesn't exist, you come up with your own type of meaning, It doesn't exist because you're just inventing things up. You're just making things up. That's all I want to say. Have you felt something strange about this? Have you felt that I have actually contradicted myself or anything? Have you felt that that I have some type of false reasoning, or did I just commit some type of fallacy? Because when I watched my video, I usually watch the video before publishing it. I have discovered this. What have I done? I have set a standard of having meaning, and I have said you can only get a meaning and have an objective meaning except if it comes from an external force, and I have refuted it, and I didn't accept it for the fact that if he got us meaning, we are only following orders, therefore we have no meaning. Okay, if this standard is wrong, it must, the other standard must be correct then. If this is wrong, this is correct. If we cannot have meaning because some external force dictates it, we must have meaning if we ourselves dictate it. But again, I told you that us inventing meanings, coming up with meanings, imagining meanings, doesn't also count for having an objective meaning, because it's subjective and we only come up with them ourselves and we change them and they are different. So how come they are objective if they are not one? So I didn't accept it when I don't accept us having meaning if some external force dictates it. I don't also accept that there is meaning when us dictate it. So here's the problem and the solution for this. The solution for this is both standards are actually incorrect. Us saying meaning of life, we actually mean something transcendental, something spiritual, something great, something of untouchable value. So both standards are incorrect because none of those standards would actually fulfill how we define meaning as. If God dictates something, we're only following old orders. We have no meaning. If we come up with things ourselves, it's only subjective. And those things are subject to change, modification, and they are different. Therefore, it's not an objective meaning. It's not that great thing that we imagine meaning to be. So, in order for us to have meaning, we need to be eternal. We need to be eternal. We cannot have that. We cannot have that because the argument for determinism destroys everything. Because we do not have free will, we cannot have meaning. We cannot have such thing because we are not free. If we start in time only because God wanted us to start in time and gave us some specific orders to follow, what type of meaning is this? And again, we didn't choose to exist and we didn't choose to be born. Neither did we choose our space and time. We didn't choose to start any of this. Then as we get older, we start to come up with things and imagine purposes and types of meaning. It cannot also be the case because I'm not free to choose those things. It's just my brain desiring pleasure. Therefore, we can only be free if we were eternal. And this is the only true standard that could be. And please, I'm welcome to critiques and your perspective about this. So, if I want to have some type of meaning, I don't need some external force to dictate it because I would be only following orders, and I don't also need to come up with this stuff because me coming up with stuff cannot be demonstrated as being correct or wrong, and I again didn't choose to come up or make up this purpose or meaning for my life because I don't have free will. I was only pushed into it. And me talking about the objective meaning of biology, there is an objective meaning which can be demonstrated scientifically, yes. But again, it doesn't match the criteria that we have talked about some type of meaning which transcends the physical experience, but is actually some type of untouchable experience, something transcendental, something unconcrete, something spiritual, something which is linked to our souls and stuff. And I don't believe that a soul exists. We are nothing but nervous system. And that's it. Thanks again for watching and see you in the next one.